Hey there, Christy here with Automation on a Mission with your latest Tidbit Tuesday. And in this video, I want to talk about audits and audit logs and troubleshooting in your own system. Why does this matter? Well, I guess number one, because nobody likes to wait to solve a problem. And so I want to show you a little bit of what we do when you have a question or you're like, hey, so such and such doesn't add up, this thing doesn't make sense, etc., etc. Things that we do include looking at audit logs to understand what actions are taken and who actually took those actions. And to that point, I want to also say that if you've heard me say it once, you've heard me say it again. One of my favorite things is, and then fill in the blank. One of my favorite things is that we don't charge based on the number of users that you have in your system. Now, there are lots of reasons for that. One being I'm lazy. Number two is I want to know who's doing what. Whether that's your business, my business, et cetera, et cetera. And when people have to pay for user seats, they share logins, and then it makes it very difficult to understand who's doing what in your system. So when you don't have a limit to how many people are in and helping work on your business's behalf, and by the way, it doesn't cost anybody, including all those other platforms that you have to pay per seat, it doesn't cost them more to give an extra seat. It's just that somebody did it once and then they thought it was a great idea. I think it's a terrible idea. Okay, back to the subject at hand though. So why does it matter? Because if something happens in the system that we don't understand, we can follow the breadcrumbs which exist in your audit logs and get an idea as, was it a system generated action? Was it an action generated by a user? If so, who was the user? And that helps us narrow down what kind of training needs to be provided and who needs to get that training. So it's not about a blame game, oh, so-and-so is a bad person, yada, yada, yada. It's specifically around helping you understand what's working and what's not in your business. So the first thing that I want to do is, and we might find this to be a lackluster experience in our system because this is our demo account, but I'm going to click on settings and I'm going to start at the highest level. So the first thing I can do is go to settings, and then 3/4 of the way down, third from the bottom, is audit logs. Now this is going to show all of the actions that are taking place in this account within a certain parameter. So this is the filters that we have to work with, and I can see who's doing what. And this is going to be showing entire application wide. So you'll see crossover from custom values to calendars, editing and modifying contacts. But notice the other things that you're looking at here. Where are we in the system? What action was taken? Are we updating something? Are we creating something? Are we deleting? And then who did it and when? And this information is super helpful because then we get an idea about what's working and what's not in the business. If I click on these 3 dots, I can click some details and I can see a little bit more information about the who, what, when, where, and why to what was being done. And that gives me a little bit more detail as it relates to that specific action. Sometimes when I'm looking at this, maybe it's related to a contact and it doesn't give me enough information and I want to get a little bit more detail. I can go back to and this is probably the one that I use the most. If I go into my contacts and I click on this contact here who's not real, and I scroll to the bottom of the CRM side, you can see that you also have a thing called your audit logs. Before I open this up, it also tells me how this particular contact was created and when, which is also information that might be super helpful as we're thinking about, like, I don't know about you, but even as my business has grown to, hey, I have a team and we're doing lots of service to lots of different people, I still know everybody who's coming into my system. So when a contact is not familiar to me, I'm like, oh, how did you get here? You know what I mean? And then I can click on these audit logs to see specific actions related to this specific contact. Now, because this is a demo account and these contacts aren't real, I am able to, Stella's going to help, because there's not a whole lot of activity happening here. But we might see things like a name change or an email update, do not disturb status was enabled or disabled. All of those activities are going to show up. And just like in our site-wide audit logs, we could see what was the action taken, who was it taken by, and we can expand and get more detail. The contact audit log is going to give you the same information, just a little bit more granular. So I'm a huge fan of being able to use that to understand things like, why did they end up in this automation? Who put them there? How did they, how did their do not disturb get enabled or disabled, or, those kinds of things. So your audit logs and a contact record can be very helpful. Now, let me give you a use case, a situation that happened, and this was quite a while ago. We had a client who was using one of our checkout forms, or like a funnel checkout step. And in her funnel checkout step, she had the toggle on for sticky contact. And so what that means is when somebody's using your computer, it's going to like adopt your information because you're the computer, like you're the information that's saved in the cookies. And so we had a client who had sticky contact turned on, and it was a husband-wife. They were registering for this particular event. They were paying for it. So one of them would purchase, and then they would go in and make a second purchase. And every time they did, instead of it creating a second contact record, it was overriding the information in the contact record. So it went from Sally to Joseph to Sally to Joseph, and it took us quite some time. And ultimately, it was the audit logs that allowed us to understand exactly what was going on, and we could follow those breadcrumb trails to the sticky contact setting in the checkout form and resolve that problem. The last piece that I want to share as it relates to your audit logs is billing. So this is probably one of the most common things that we get. And I don't have an example to show right here, but if you click on billing in your own system, you'll see a place that says wallet, and you'll see something that says transactions. And ultimately what you're looking at when it comes to transactions is an audit log of every single micro penny that is executed in your account. Every email, every text message, every time you use an AI feature, every time you use a paid feature, et cetera, if there is a single millipenny being spent, there's going to be a record of it. And so you have an audit log of all of your billing, just like you do of every other action as a part of your system. Okay? So the thing that I want you to know is that no matter what you're doing, no matter what your team is doing, there's always a breadcrumb trail. And that breadcrumb trail allows us to understand what is happening in our business so that we can get to a solution the fastest way possible. So if you are feeling brave and courageous, next time you're having a challenge and you're like, I don't understand what happened, consider looking at the audit logs of your system to understand whether or not there's something that can help you get an answer as to how things are operating the way they are. And as always, if that doesn't work, come in, ask us a question, submit a support ticket. We'll help you get to the bottom of whatever you're dealing with. All right? As always, we're here for you. Thanks so much.